Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with guitarist, composer, and leader of the experimental rock group CarbonWorks, Neal Barnard, on his new 2023 album called Vanishing Act. Neal rings in the new year with this energetic new single titled Marie Osmole. The song is the third release from CarbonWorks' upcoming album that is due out on April 21st, 2023. As a part of CarbonWorks singles, the song is a unique combination of various genres. We get into the whole album, what's been going on, COVID life, the future, and so much more, along with being a very accomplished musician. He's also in the medical world. We talk about that too. He is a repeat customer here on Neon Jazz. It's great to catch up with him again. Enjoy this interview.
It's great that you reached out. It's funny because I was going through my episodes. I had an issue with my RSS feed, and I was going through them, and I specifically came across your interview right when Patrice said, "Hey, Neal has new material out. Do you want to interview?" And I was like, "Oh yeah," because I remember that interview really well, and it was a really good one. So yeah, I'm glad that we can reconnect, and it's great to see that you got new material out there.
Yeah, we do. We got a new album. I'm really excited about it, and a new video that's turned out to be really hot, and all kinds of stuff. And some of it's jazz, and some of it's in other directions. But anyway, I think it's a cool thing.
Well, before we get into that, I want to kind of ask you, especially in your capacity in the medical field, how, now that, not that COVID's gone, but now that the world's kind of opening up more, how did you survive that time period, and how has it changed the way that you live your life now?
Well, I got to tell you, there's nothing like having people together in the same spot. And when COVID arrived, let's call it early 2020, I mean, practically overnight, every business emptied out, every restaurant emptied out, every jazz club emptied out, everything emptied out. And suddenly it meant if you wanted to get people together and you want to show them some music videos or play a gig, you're not going to do it. From our standpoint, it didn't affect our recording so much because we were still able to do that, and we were working hard at work on this new album, so that was all right. But it was punishing to the music industry, and so many musicians really had a hard time. And I got to tell you, I don't think it's over exactly. I mean, there are still places that are not booking music the way they used to. I hope it all comes back.
Yeah, I think there's probably a good chance that it will, because I think the template now is the kind of formed. I know here in Kansas City, a lot of musicians, a lot of people are coming back, and of course everybody has the latitude to still mask up and to use the precautions that we've been used to. And I think that, I'm cautious to not say, yeah, COVID's over. It's more of, the world's responding in a different way than it has for a while. And it is really good to see that, musicians are back, because they were shuttered for so long. I mean, even when stadiums were filling up for sports, musicians, because the nature of what they do, sending air through a horn and particles going out, whatever it is, it's nice to see that things are kind of coming back a little bit now.
Oh man, you should have seen us in the studio. You bring in a trumpet player, and everybody's got like double masks, and they're all thinking, oh my God, are there particles in the air? And then you've got your bottles of disinfectant for all the microphones and everything else. I mean, you want to respect your musicians, and you don't want to hurt people. And of course, the disease has calmed down a bit, but we've had to be careful throughout. It's also changed things. Before 2020, people weren't doing these sort of like Zoom concerts where you'd have your different musicians in different boxes. And I think it's as bad as the pandemic has been, it's taught us some new ways of reaching people, and it's allowed us in some ways to reach more powerfully, to think, okay, can the internet bring my message to areas where it never would have before?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a lot of silver linings that have gone into this, and I've heard it firsthand from a lot of people. So let's talk about your new material. Did all of this kind of come by proxy of living through this pandemic? Was it things that you were kind of thinking about prior? How did all of the nexus of this new creativity come about?
Oh man, who knows where creativity comes from? I got to tell you though, the first song on this album is called Athena, the goddess Athena. And who knows where these things come from? I was in a hotel room, and it was 4 a.m. I just woke up, and you're lying there, and this saxophone line came into my head, and I just was playing with this song thinking, this is really nice. And it was a little bit like, if you remember the old Robert De Niro movie Taxi Driver, there's this kind of beautiful saxophone that starts it off, and it's rain in the streets of New York. It was kind of like that feel. And I thought, oh man, if I go back to sleep, that music is going to be gone. I'm not going to remember it. So I got up. It was basically the middle of the night, and I got my sequencer out, and I just started writing this song. And it's jazzy, but it connects to, the saxophone connects to my guitar, and some beautiful interplay with Allegra, who plays the violin. And then the lyrics come in, starts out in French, with this fabulous French singer named Laura Lotz, who lives in France, and I've discovered in a way I can tell you about. And then it ends with lyrics in Latin. And I know that sounds like crazy, like why? Well, because frankly, that's the way we always are. But if you think about it, the French language is very smooth, and it's like a saxophone. The consonants are not like percussive. In English or maybe Spanish, the consonants hit you like a drum. And so the fact that we did it in French just works really beautifully. So anyway, so that's the start of it. And then from there on in, the whole rest of the album goes in all different directions. Much of it jazzy, but some of it is kind of a throwback to things that we were doing 30 years ago. There's a little bit of a new wave and even a punk feel that we throw in. Because, to tell you the truth, my goal is to not have it be every song the same. My goal is to be really a soundtrack, so that we can bring you through moods, and hopefully the end result is a really nice one. I'm really happy with it. It's called Vanishing Act, and it's going to come out in a month or two.
So I think that's the thing I noticed during this pandemic period, is that there was levels of electronica that were getting infused into the whole jazz arena. And I think maybe there was a part of just the way that we're kind of moving forward, is that there seems to be more elements that are getting kind of pushed into what we consider jazz. Are you noticing that? Is that kind of a part of what you're doing as well?
Yes, and I have to say, I think some people might have hated the idea that it's not just jazz. One of the songs that I have, it has a peculiar name. It's called Marie Osmole. It starts out for all the world as a 1980s punk song, and it's got me banging on the guitar just like somebody would have done at CBGB in New York. But then all of a sudden, you put the brakes on, the song stops, and then this jazz bass starts up. Suddenly you're in some Parisian jazz restaurant, and the bass and the instruments and that kind of Stefan Grappelli violin all come in, and they serenade you for a minute, and then bang, it stops, goes back to punk. And it's somehow it fits, but as I said, it sort of breaks all the rules. I mean, you should never start with punk, go to jazz, go back. But I found that you can do it, and sometimes you want to do it, because you don't want to just. I didn't want to just do, here's Ella Fitzgerald on my song. I wanted to kind of grab people by the collar a little bit, and so that's what we've been doing on a number of these things.
And I think the other thing from my end of things here is that, throughout the pandemic, there was consistently albums that I was getting sent to my station so that I could play it. But I think now there's a different feel to it, because, yours is coming out in April, and it seems like it's going to be a really good kind of way to kind of reintroduce the world to music again, and you got new material. Have you thought about how cathartic that is to kind of go into this new era?
Yes, but this is a tough era. Things change. The pandemic was one part of it, but let's face it, the other part of it is aggression. It's from my standpoint, both as a musician, as a doctor, as a person living in Washington D.C. It seems to me that people have become more tolerant of aggression than before, and in all different ways. I talk about verbal aggression in the media, what's happening in Ukraine right now. But the second song on this record is called International Anthem. And what I'm doing with this is I'm trying to, it starts out with the U.S. national anthem, but then after about one line, it changes to the British national anthem. And then after another line, it breaks to the French national anthem and the Italian national anthem and the German national anthem. And one layers over the other. And I know this sounds absolutely nuts, just like everything else we've ever done. But it works. And I'm not always big on a message in a song, but the message here is, can we dissolve these borders and reach across and get along? And so what I did is I tried to just make these national anthems all kind of fit together. And then you can hear the music heating up and conflict arising and so forth, and then it kind of settles out. So anyway, this is my own anti-nationalistic thing that really came from the era that we live in, which is one where, I was a product of a time that was relatively peaceful. World War II was ancient history, could never happen again. Well, we're now at this point where we're thinking, wait a minute, anything could happen now. So anyway, that's the message of this song, and there's every different kind of musical element thrown into these national anthems too. So I think people are going to scream when they hear it, but we'll see.
Well, and I think that's the interesting part of music these days too, is that this has really been quite a Bob Dylan moment for everybody, because there's so much going on, and like you said, anything can happen at any point. So, I mean, have you felt as though there's more of a responsibility, so to speak? Maybe that's too hard of a term. More of a way that musicians should put their voice out there in a time that needs it so much?
I like it when musicians do, but I think the point that you raised just now is really central to it, which is, does Bob Dylan standing up and saying, the answer's blowing in the wind, does that get us anywhere? And my answer is, I don't know. I'm hoping it does. I'm hoping that some of the things that I have said will at least validate feelings that people have. In some of our videos, compassion, the need for compassion, comes through loud and clear, and I'm hoping that in some ways it promotes a message. But I think it's very, very easy for people to hear a message in a song, ignore it, go on with their lives. So I think, there have been so many musician activists, from Dylan to Bono and everybody have been doing this kind of thing. Including me, I guess. You're always trying to find a way to touch people in the heart, to motivate them, to kick them in the butt in different ways, and I am too. But you always have to think. People are in many ways reticent to take action, even when they know what's in front of them. So we've got to pair our musical activism with kind of every other form of activism too, I think.
So, I know we interviewed before, we talked about this duality of you being a musician and a physician. And do you feel a little bit more gung-ho about being a musician now after what we've lived through, or is the feeling kind of the same?
For me, the feeling is the same. I mean, ever since I was 6 years old and studying piano and cello and the various instruments that I had to, that I kind of was forced to learn growing up. Music has been central to my life long before I did any of these other things. So for me, music is something that I've wanted to do, that I feel I need to do, and I'm hoping that this album, that frankly, I think it's the best one that we've done, but each one has its own feel. So yeah, I love it. I think it's essential, and I have to say, sometimes in this crazy world, music is kind of the only thing that makes sense sometimes. Not that it's necessarily rational, but a beautiful guitar line, whatever I can play, lyrics that really hit home in some way or another, even though ours are sometimes a bit on the avant-garde side, I'll admit. But in some ways, it's something you could control. It's something you can enjoy. It's something that beats turning on the evening news sometimes.
For sure. So talk to me a little bit about the release, when this will be released. I know it was in April. Live shows, anything related to how people can pick this up and learn more about anything related to your touring or anything musically going on in your world.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, the very first video actually, there's two videos that came from it. You can actually see them right now. If you go on to YouTube and look up CarbonWorks You'll see all our videos there, but one of them is called Training That Works. And this is the goofiest song ever. It was written by Bob Gray, who's been a friend and collaborator of mine for decades now. And he was somewhere at work, and somebody had this brochure about training that could help you. And somehow this just made him laugh a little bit. I don't know why. This is some goofy training program. Anyway, Bob wrote this goofy song about I'm at work and I've got training that's going to help me succeed. It was kind of a tongue-in-cheek David Byrne kind of thing. But anyway, Training That Works, we put it on YouTube at the end of last year. It's already had 300,000 views. So the album's not even out yet. But that was kind of the first one. And then also you'll see one that's really quiet, that we did because of the pandemic. When you might remember 2020, the pandemic was coming out and kids were suddenly overnight pulled out of school and they were freaked out and there were deaths in families. So I wrote this song that's basically to say, you're going to be okay. And I didn't mean it to be a Hallmark card, way of lying about the realities of things, but I meant it to be calming for children. So I wrote this song called in English, it's Everything's All Right. In French, it's Tout ira bien. That means everything will be all right now. It doesn't mean things are going to be all right forever, but for tonight when you're going to sleep, you're going to be okay. And I got to tell you, it is such a beautiful song. Christine Herrera sang it in French and also in English. And it's got a beautiful video of animals who are getting ready to go to sleep, just like a little kid would. And they yawn. There's a koala yawning and a lizard yawning and so forth. And then they all bed down to sleep. And so the high point of my life so far musically was that when we released that and put the video out, a parent put in a comment and she said, my 4-year-old son watches that video every night before he goes to sleep, and he names all the musicians in the credits, first in English, and he watches it all again in French, and then he can sleep. And I thought, okay, my life has been worthwhile.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. Well, Neal, thank you for opening up. Thank you for talking about this project. It's great to catch up with you again. I look forward to having it on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's always great to talk to you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we get into the finest players and minds in Washington, D.C., New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Neal for his time, music, and cool. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews or Neon Jazz Interviews on iTunes or Spotify and at YouTube.com. For all things Neon Jazz, visit neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.